Growing up, there was definitely music like being played around the house. Oddly enough, like my grandma used to like bands like Whitesnake and Bon Jovi, so I can remember those bands being played. But I have a memory for when I was in high school. I think I was like a freshman. I went to a show in Providence, where I'm from, and I saw Saves the Day and the Get Up Kids. And this was like before I was even playing music. And like I remember going to that show and seeing them and being like, I want to do this. And that's when I just started to like really get into like all those kind of punk bands and pop punk bands, all that kind of stuff. But that was a big event for me. It's just become such like a part of me. It's literally like breathing at this point. You know, it's kind of weird because it's like, it's one of those things where like the positives are like, I'm obsessed with music, you know, and I love doing it every day. The negatives are, it's hard to shut it off at the same time, and especially when it becomes like your job, because like you'll be laying in bed being like, oh my God, I hope this song gets added to this playlist because it needs to happen and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, it's such a part of my life that it's like truly like my identity at this point. Yeah. My favorite way to write is to kind of take all my gear and go down to, I have a rehearsal space in Hollywood, and kind of do like a band practice environment and just get loud, get the guitars loud, sing through a PA, and almost so it feels like a show. And then from there, if it's not crap, I'll take it, demo it at my apartment, do a full demo, listen back, and then I'll take that to my producer, and then we'll sit with it, and then we'll build on top of that track. So that's the whole process. It's a rush, you know? It's like, it's definitely my favorite part of all this, is definitely the performance aspect. Yeah, sometimes in my head it's a little weird where it's like, because most of the songs are about stuff that's happened. And yeah, it's a little odd, like sometimes like you're up there like talking about like the worst things that have ever happened to you. But it's just like, I feel like because I fell in love with music in a live setting, like at that show I was telling you about, for me, like to be able to be on the other side of it, it's so fulfilling and it's just cool, and I'm super grateful like every chance I get to perform. It's so fun to kind of pull into a city, and especially when it's like a new city, you've never been there before. You're with your best friends, you kind of like park the van, unload, go do the sound check, and then you go explore, you know? And so now it's kind of cool because like all throughout the country, we have all these like little spots in different cities that like we like to go to and check out when we go back. And to be able to meet people from different spots and then like build a relationship, and that's where social media is cool because you can keep in touch. And then when you go back, yeah, you start to like recognize people in the crowd, which is kind of wild. So yeah, touring, I love it. I miss it. Anytime I'm home, I'm just like, all right, when are we going back, you know? So in a dream world, I would kind of get to the point where we're playing like old, beautiful theaters. Like for me, like I think that's the coolest thing. And we did a tour with Johnny Lang, and it was a theater tour. And before that, I was so used to playing clubs and like all that kind of stuff. And then it hit me, I was like, you can really like have a career and kind of grow old doing it this way. So if I can get to a point where like we're able to kind of fill those big old theaters, and just keep putting out music that like we actually care about, you know? I think I've kind of passed the point of chasing like radio and all that. And for me, it's more about like trying to get into those theaters. Well, Ryan Adams is a huge influence for sure, especially from like a singer-songwriter perspective. Butch Walker is another guy. He's like truly an idol of mine. I got to open for him last year, which was crazy. Yeah. It was funny because he had like a contest if you wanted to open up for him. He throws like a benefit show out here, and I remember being like on my phone at home, and I'm like, I'm gonna enter into this contest, like I don't even care. And then I entered in, and then I got to open up for him, which was awesome. And I love that he's a producer too, you know? He's such a great producer and songwriter. And then I mean, Kings of Leon are probably my favorite bands. I just love what they do. I love how like their records are great, but then you go see them live and it's like, it's raw and it's kind of sloppy, but it's like sloppy in the best way, you know? And for new artists, I mean, Phoebe Bridgers, I'm like obsessed with her right now. I think she's incredible. So Yeah, there's definitely like, I only listen to like a handful of artists, I feel like, but the ones that I do listen to, it's like I listen to them over and over and over again, and I'm inspired by them, so.
I'm so cliche. Got drunk with you in LA. Then woke up next to you the next day. I'm so cliche. Instead of laying in your bed, I'm all alone in a hotel room thinking about you. Instead of laying in your bed, I'm all alone in a hotel room. You say you wanna be friends, ooh, but how can we be friends, ooh?
So Cliche was about, I was dating this girl and we broke up, like most relationships. And then, but she had a trip booked to come to LA to come visit, and she took the trip anyway. And so we hung out, and then I just remember like, it was such a typical story where like this relationship isn't working, but now we're still hanging out and like doing that whole thing. And I can remember standing there in the driveway being like, this is so cliche, like I'm so cliche. And then I like immediately drove home and wrote it that night. And even like on the record, like the vocal was done like in my apartment like that night. And I remember like being kind of buzzed. And then I woke up the next day being like, is this even good? You know? And then listened to it and I was like, yeah, I like this. I like the song. So we went with it, yeah. Doing an album, and it's gonna be my first solo project. This whole thing is my first solo project. So it's gonna be called Not a Burnt CD, because all of our band's records have at one point been burnt CDs, and I'm hoping that doesn't happen this time around. Probably will, in all honesty. But yeah, so I think it's gonna be like 6 or 7 songs, that's the goal. We've already released 3 tracks, and we're going to do another single next month, and then the full project comes out in January. So expect 2 more singles, and then the record comes out in January. And then focus on getting on the road. We've already been talking, like pitching to get on some tours, and really trying to make next year like dedicated to being back on the road. Like this whole year, I basically took the year off from touring and just had to write and record, you know? But I'm pretty antsy and I want to get back and work this music, you know? And live a little.